Hi Year 9, welcome back to our second unit of work here on our geography channel. This unit is called Urbanisation, and today's lesson is looking at the population distribution and location of major cities in the UK. So we're going to be looking at the reasons why cities in the UK have located where they are. So for example, why is London in the location that it is now? What made it grow in that area? So we've got some things you need to know before this lesson. The date you have to hand in your work is Thursday the 11th of June, and you have to do it via Teams, and you can email your teacher if you can't get on Teams, and you know their emails by now. So, key terms for this lesson then. The first one, so if you write these down as we go, guys. Population density. This term refers to the amount of people who live in 1 square kilometre. So it could be lots of people living in that area or very few, and we call that the density. So what is the density, population density of Lewisham? With that, you can say whether it's a dense population, and this means when there are many people living per square kilometre. So for example, Lewisham is very dense, it has a dense population. Some locations will be sparse, they'll have sparse population, which means there are very few people living there. Site, this refers to the actual place where a settlement first grew up. This refers mainly to its physical setting, so it could be a coastal location or in a valley. And situation is the location of a place relative to other features nearby. So whether it's accessible, are there any natural resources around, is there a river, things like that. So there you go, guys, write those down and we'll move on. Right, so in front of you, you can see this figure, figure 1. It's a photograph of an urban area. Now we know that the term urban also refers to areas that are built up, like cities and towns. What I would like you to do is really look at this picture, this photograph, and using your own knowledge, can you identify 2 features that represent an urban area? So 2 things that you would describe to someone to show that it is urban. So pause this video for about 3 minutes. Okay, so let's get our green pens out and do some corrections, or give yourself a tick. What I put down was this. When I look at this picture, I can see that there are high density of buildings. Remember this word density, it refers to the amount in the area, the amount of anything. In this case, buildings. There are lots of buildings in this picture, so the density is high. There are many roads. There are high-rise buildings like flats and office blocks. There are historical buildings as well, like this old building there. And there are modern buildings, you can see here. There isn't much vegetation, so you can see here there's not a lot of open green space. You can see some trees, but that's it. And there's most likely shops down here, and these obviously look like offices. Right, what we're going to do here is we're going to start describing population densities using some data. So in front of you, you've got figure 2, which is a map showing China's population distribution. So basically it's a map showing you where the most people live in China. The darker the colour, as you can see here on this key here, the darker the colour means the more dense the population is, and There we go. So you can have a quick look there. You can see where the most densely populated places are. So if we look at the task here, it says using figure 2, describe China's population distribution. It's worth 3 marks. So I've given you some pointers here that you need to follow. I need to comment on the general pattern. So for example, where in the country is it mostly populated and where is it less? Is there a pattern? Is it more dense in a certain area than others? Or is it all sporadic? Is it all the way over the place? Can I give an example of a dense area? Okay, so I need to get my knowledge of China there and give a name of an area. And can I give an example of a sparse area? Okay, so I've got to use the key. I've got to use the data given to me here in the key for some extra PLC. I need to know either south, north, east and west. I've got to give those locations, and if I can, I've got to name a place. So let's see how I did. Here we go. So I've said that the population distribution in China is not even. Okay, I get a tick for that because I've noticed that it's not the same throughout the country. There are areas that are highly populated, densely populated, and areas that are sparse. Okay, so it's not even. For example, some areas are densely populated, such as the south and the far southeast, with a population of 100 million plus. Whereas other areas are sparsely populated, for example in the western region of China, with a population of less than 10 million. Okay, so now you know what you have to do. It's pretty simple. You've got to remember these 3 pointers when you're describing the distribution. Let's give it a go. Right, so taking on board what I've just done with China, I would like you to do the same thing but for the UK. So here is a map showing the UK's population distribution. Okay, I want you to describe the UK's population distribution. This time you have 4 points to answer, and this answer is worth 4 marks. What I want you to do is use the key for your data. Okay, so you can use the amounts here that represent the colours on the map, and that shows you people per square kilometre. Can you name any of the places on the map? So I can see here, on right down the bottom here, which is the darkest area, I think it's about up the top one here, or maybe this one, 2,501. What is that area? You should know it. I'll give you a hint. You live there. Right. Give yourself about 5 minutes, guys, to do this. Good luck. Okay, let's see some answers. So get your green pens out and let's give it a tick. So you should have said that the population is not even. Okay, so that refers to the general pattern. It is not even. As you can see, all over the UK, there are different amounts. Some areas are densely populated, such as the southeast around London. Good, so you should have written that as London. Well done. Whereas other areas are sparsely populated, such as the northwest of Scotland, where the population density is only between 0 to 25 people per square kilometre. Well done. All right, so we know where the places in the UK have the most population, the most dense population. If you haven't figured out already, they are big cities. So they are cities that have the highest population. But why? What has happened in those cities to attract so many people to live there, and meaning that other parts of the country have very few? So why are lots of people deciding to move to these areas? Now, there are lots of reasons behind this. Some of them are historical reasons, some are just location, they've got a really good location, and others have things like resources available. So let's just have a look at the places on this map that I want you to focus on. We've got Edinburgh, Leeds, Sheffield, London, Cardiff, Manchester and Liverpool. If you notice, for places like Liverpool, Edinburgh, Cardiff and London, they are what we call ports. Now, ports are areas for ships to come in and dock, basically park, and then that's where they offload all of their resources and their cargo to then sell across the country. But we can also use it to put our resources onto those boats and ship them off around the world to sell. So having a port is really handy to make money. There's a hint for you. We've got other places though, like Manchester. Manchester is quite flat and low-lying. That means it hasn't really got many hills or very high land. Why would that be a reason for lots of people to live there? Then we've got these places like Sheffield and Leeds. Now these places are very famous for their coal mining and then iron ore mining. So this is the minerals, the raw materials that they have there. But why would these factors attract lots of people to live there? Now I want you to explain that now using a chain of reason. So why would Edinburgh, being a port, mean that lots of people would want to live there? Give yourself 5 minutes. Pause the video now. Okay, let's have a look how well you did. Now this is quite tricky. So you should have got something like this. So having a location where a port can be built, this enabled population growth due to the ability of these growing settlements to trade resources and therefore many jobs. People were then attracted to such cities for employment. So people wanted to go where the jobs were, and if there is ports, then there'll be lots of resources and shipping, trade, lots of jobs. Flat or low-lying land like Manchester, why do people want to go there? Well, this means if it's flat, this means it is cheap and easy to build in these locations, such as Birmingham and Manchester, resulting in the growth of housing and industries, which attracted more people to these areas. If you can build a house there, it's easy, so lots of people would want to go there, and it's cheap. Minerals and raw materials, so mines. Sheffield grew to its supply of natural iron ore and coal. This enabled the steel industry to grow and provide secure employment for many people. This attracted people to the city for work purposes. Okay, so when all of these mines were open at the turn of the last century, people flocked to those industries because it was good work. So here, we're going on to the next key word now, which is site. Okay, so why is site really important for the success of cities? So here we've got figure 4, which is a really an artist's impression of what London would have looked like during the Roman times. So we're talking about 2,000 years ago. So London today is our capital city. It's one of the biggest cities in the world, and it's really, really successful. So why has it been so successful over all these years? Well, there are lots of factors that come into play about its site. The first one you can see here, that London has a lot of flat land. So when the Romans came to the UK, They came right here and they thought this is great in London because the land is flat, they can build on it quite easily. Now if you have a quick look at this, you can see some other factors on what attracted the Romans to build the city here. Let's have a look around at some more factors. We've also got defence. Now back then, people needed to defend themselves from attackers and other people trying to invade the country. So having your city, where all the important people were, near somewhere which had defence, that's good. That means you'll be safe from any attackers. So here, the River Thames was actually a great defence system, which meant if anyone was coming to invade, they'd have to get over the river first, which gave all the people in the city time to prepare for a fight or get out of there. So here, you've also got bridging routes. So building at the narrowest, shallowest part of a river, so resources from both sides can be used. So here you can see it, you can see a bridge going across the river, and that was most probably London Bridge. London Bridge was the main bridge across the River Thames for many, many years. Now we have loads of bridges going all the way up the Thames, but there they had the bridge at the narrowest point of the river, so it's easy to build across, so they could get across to the north of the river and the south of the river. It's also transport routes. The river was really, really important. So obviously we didn't have cars back then, you had horse and carts, but mainly things were transported long distances via water. And having the Thames here meant that London was easily accessible for trade. So people from all over the world could ship their cargo up the Thames. So that meant that they could make lots of money in London because it had good accessibility. Okay guys, so what I would like you to do now is just think about what we've just discussed in the just before, and I want you to write down on your paper numbers 1 to 8. I'd like you to write that down in your margin or just down the side of your paper, and then I would like you to match it, the site there, that's 1 to 8, with the description, that's A to H. So that's all you have to do. So I want you to pause this video, take about 3 minutes to do this, and just write the number with the corresponding letter for the description. Off you go. Okay, so you should have got this. So get your green pens out and just give yourself a tick. Now this is really important. I don't want you to just zoom on after we've written this, because the next activity requires you to know these descriptions. But anyway, here is the answers. All right, so the last activity I want you to do is this. I want you to think about how important the situation of cities is for their success. So like London, how has it stayed being the most important city of our country and one of the world? And it's all about the situation, so where it is in comparison to other places, or in relation to other places. So here you've got a map, figure 5. It shows a map of London's location in relation to Europe. So obviously here's Europe, mainland Europe, here's the UK. And you can see London there with the star. What I want you to do, you've got 2 things to do here. I want you first to explain how London's situation has influenced its growth. So how has it become a big city over the years? Then I want you to copy out the terms for site and their description from earlier. So think back to our key terms at the beginning of the lesson, and can you write them out again? There is a challenge here as well. Do you think site or situation influenced the growth of London more? So do you think it was the site or the situation of London which meant it could be so successful and grow? So for this, guys, I want you to spend about 10 minutes doing this. Really think about it using PLC, and then we'll go over it. Okay, guys, let's see how well you've done. So do you want to get a green pen out and we can go over it? So you should have said something like this. Due to London being located close to Europe, as it is, it's quite close to mainland Europe, this would mean that it would have a large market to trade with. Therefore, industries would grow, and this would lead to the growth of the city. Well done, guys. See you next time.